So I paused us on the last one because it was good. And I felt like we really needed to pick up with how do we have healthy relationships. I think we talked a lot about what do boundaries look like and how do we know when they're being violated and what are my boxes. But I think really even part of the wrestle that I've been going through is now these people have violated boundaries or we're in this negative place. Now, how do we get it right? If we want to remain in relationship, how do we get it right? Do we not remain in relationship? When is it okay? And not even just timing. Because I'm with you, Daniel. I mean, there are relationships in my life that have been for seasons, and I've known that for a really long time. Like, meaning I could say to people, there are seasons for friendships, and they would be like, no way. You know, we're always going to be besties for the resties. And I'd be like, maybe. We'll see. No, I'm
Probably
just
not.
kidding,
Didn't say that to them, but in your heart. It was like, it was back here
Yes.
somewhere.
No, but they were cyclical. You know, they were for that season or whatever.
Right.
So what about people, though, that, you know, what if it's your parents? What if it's your siblings? What if it's, you know, I'm not going to say your spouse because obviously there's probably some marriage counseling that might need to happen there. But, you know, but what if it is someone that you need to stay in relationship with or you desire to stay in relationship with? Let me say it that way. And then when is it okay to say, I get this relationship, it just really isn't going to be good? What are your thoughts on that?
There's normally the big bump that I found in relationships. There'll be a big conflict, and that'll be the make or break of it. So how you respond to that conflict will either make the relationship or break it.
Yeah.
And so I've not always navigated that the best. So like I only have X amount of relationship capacity, and I'm starting to try to figure that out in life. Like, how much capacity do I have? Like, I work in customer service currently, so I'm interacting with a few hundred people a week. And so my relational capacity in this season's probably a little less because I am what I lovingly call a high functioning introvert. So I can be an extrovert when I want to be. I can be an introvert. Like, it just depends on my mood. So my relational thing of how do I build relationship? How do I repair it? That's been difficult to navigate because I have lived multiple seasons. You know, obviously I'm from Australia, if you couldn't tell by the accent. I've lived in Hawaii. I've lived in California. I've lived in Pennsylvania. Like, I have all of these seasons. I cannot keep as much connection with every single region as I used to.
Yeah.
So because one of my traits is loyalty, I find it very difficult to let go of relationships. So I don't necessarily have answers. I just recognize it for me. I've just let a friend of mine, I had a conversation. He said, I'm inspecting my relationships by their fruit. If it's fruitful, I want to keep it. If there's no fruit that I can really see, I'm just going to not like cut it off, but I'm not going to invest in it.
Yeah.
That kind of really resonated with me this season. Like, what does investment in a relationship look like? Because I'm normally the one that does the text. Like, a lot of the times I find I'm the initiator. But when someone texts me back like if they text me, I'm like, oh, this is actually mutual. Like, if I'm constantly having to remind you of my existence, if that makes sense, is that really a friendship?
Right.
Or am I holding, like, I don't do well with letting things go. Just point of honesty. Like, so I don't do well at that. Getting into the relationship, 100%, I will give you everything. I will fight for you. I will swords up, let's go. But at the point where it's no longer healthy, I personally don't do good at recognizing that.
Yeah, the whole thing of, is there feedback? Like the whole text, am I the only one that's texting or is somebody texting back? Like, am I putting more into this than the other person is? And is there a real value? Because that's one of the ways you recognize if there's a real relationship or if it's just convenience or maybe there's something I kind of want out of this person or they want out of me or like that kind of issue. Is there something going on there or is it a real relationship? That's one of the things that I'm looking at. If I'm always the instigator, then there's probably a problem there. And I'll actually just let it rest and find out if they ever instigate.
Yeah.
And just give it time and find out. And if they don't, then, I mean, it's not that I'm never going to, but I'm not going to do it purposefully to try to keep something going. I think it was Peter Scazzaro I think it was in one of his books or one of his talks. He wrote Emotionally Healthy Discipleship, Emotionally Healthy Relationships. Amazing stuff. Some of the best stuff I've learned about relationships. He talks about this parable of somebody walking across the bridge, and there's somebody walking towards you, and they come and they hand you a rope, like, hold on to this, and then you grab hold of the rope, and then they jump off the bridge, but the rope is attached to them. And they're like, hold on to the rope. Why am I holding on to this rope? You're the one that jumped off the bridge. Well, but you got to hold on to the rope. If you don't hold on to the rope, I'm going to fall. But I didn't ask for this rope. You gave me this rope, and you've created this problem yourself. And I don't have the strength to pull you up. Like, you've got to actually crawl up. If you don't crawl up, you're not going to make it. I can't crawl up. I don't want to. I can't put that effort into it. You've just got to hold me. At some point in time, you've got to let go of the rope and let the person deal with their own issues. Now, I mean, that's not a harsh thing. It sounds harsh because we've been taught, and I've been taught, but I know it's in our culture, at least here in America, take responsibility for everybody else. Take responsibility for everybody else. Your responsibility is how somebody else feels when they're around you. And it's just not, that's not true. That's not love. Love is, I'm going to do the best to be the best me that actually is caring, as kind, is aware. But I'm not responsible for how that comes across. And if I'm actually being loving, that I'm going to have to say something that you're not going to like sooner or later. Because I can hate you and let you die, or I can hurt you and tell you truth. And if I have to make that choice, I mean, used to be I would choose just to let somebody die so I didn't hurt their feelings. But I lost too many people that way. And now I mean, it's so scary, man. I hate conflict. I hate disappointing people. I mean, like that's ingrained in me since I was 6 years old, like deeply ingrained in me. But I will say what's important. And that's one of the other ways I find out if there's a real relationship. Can I actually say what needs to be said? And what happens to the relationship? Do you run, or do we walk through this together? Because I'm not saying what needs to be said to her. I'm doing it to heal. And that becomes a key as to where you can actually build and the strength of relationships. How long do you let it go? Are they trying to climb up the rope? You can't put more into a relationship than the other person's putting into it. If all of the weight of keeping a relationship going is on your hands, then, somebody say, if you love somebody, let them go. And if they come back to you, it's real, you got to let it go and then see if there's a return. And, that's one of the keys. And just that ability, can I actually be honest? Or do I have to pretend to maintain this relationship? If I have to pretend to maintain this relationship, then that relationship is not going to last, because I'm done pretending. I can't. I will not align with the father of lies to make somebody happy. I just won't do it. I can't.
That's such a good point. I think especially when that big bump that we talked about does come, because I have seen that so much in my life in different relationships recently, where for some reason it was as if a bump just had to get laid in the floor of or the road is the best term, of every relationship. And some of those I've been able to see exactly that. We can sit down, we can have those conversations, we can work through it. And there are other relationships where I reached a point where I was like, okay, I'm holding this rope. I'm trying really hard. I'm hanging on. I want this to work. And when I finally do try to have that conversation and tell them, hey, like, this is not working. This is not healthy. This is not good for either of us. This is hurting me, right? And they are not willing to then put the work in and actually fight to get to a healthier place for themselves or the relationship. That has been the hardest point for me to get to, is I will fight for anyone that I love all day long, too much, to the point where I'm like a cheesy movie character. Okay. Sometimes it's not healthy. Sometimes it's like, I will fight for you until I'm blue in the face. And I've had to take a step back with the Lord. And this is going to sound in a way that I do not mean it, but the Lord has helped me to realize, like, are those people fighting for me the way I'm fighting for them?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I am not getting that in return, then it is not actually a mutually beneficial, fruitful relationship. Now, I don't expect them to fight the same way as me.
Yeah.
We're two different people. You're not going to show love the way that I show love. And that's okay. I don't expect you to. But are you trying? Do I see that effort? Are you trying to crawl up the ladder? Are you trying to restore what has been hurt? And the people who do, we can get over that bump and we can get to a healthier place. And the ones that are not willing to fight, are not willing to even have those conversations, then it leads me to a point of, okay, then I have to take a step back.
Yeah.
I can't fix this for both of us.
Yeah.
I just have to let you go and hope that if they were meant to be in your life, the Lord brings them back. And if they weren't, it's a lesson, as painful as that lesson might be.
Mm. I recently had a relationship where there was a pattern of behavior. And so I think that's another thing that I make a decision on. So if we have a bump, even if it's a big bump, but it's not a pattern of behavior,
Right.
I'm able to say, is this person's character and nature? Because we
Yeah.
all sin and fall short of the
Absolutely.
glory of God. So we all have these moments where, I had a moment with the staff. I tell the story a lot because I think the more I tell it, the more healing it becomes for me. But I'm pretty easygoing. I don't really snap. I really don't. Like, I'm not saying that for the cameras. I'm not easily triggered, if that makes sense. And so there have been seasons in my life where I definitely was, but I was having a conversation, and what I was perceiving to happen and what they were perceiving to happen were two different things. So I was perceiving, stop trying to fix it and tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. And what they were perceiving is there's a problem presented and let's fix it. So I kind of snap and I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful y'all can all fix it for me, And as soon as that comes out, I'm like, whoa, that was very inappropriate. Like, I don't even know where that came from. And I mean, it was immediate. It wasn't like it took me 2 days. I mean, immediately I was like, whoa, did that just come out of my mouth? What just happened? And so I was like, hey, I'm really sorry. I need to figure out what just happened. And so I step back and I take like 5 minutes and I'm like, oh, I know what just happened. Okay. So I go back and I'm like, that didn't have anything to do with you at all.
Yeah.
You did not do anything wrong. You did not say the wrong thing. I have this situation happening in my life. And I was just literally filtering this through that. And will you forgive me? And will you trust me? And I said, my hope is that you'll know the nature and character of who I am. And this doesn't align with that. And so this one incident won't break our trust. And I know that seems like a minor thing, but you don't know their filters. You don't know what's happened to them. Here I am leading them and now I've caused them harm. And what if that's been, a history for them and their lives and all of that. So they're all coming to the table with all of that. And I'm saying, can you trust me again? Does this align with the nature of me? No. Okay. They can trust me again. But what do we do in these situations where we are in these relationships and it is the nature and the character in this relationship? Because people are not all good or all bad. So I can even look in a relationship and say like, wow, that does not happen in this relationship with this other person, with them. Like, that's weird. Why does this happen in the relationship with me consistently? What in me brings this out in them? What pattern have we set up together? Because now we're both playing some weird role that I don't, no one's even paying me for this role. Like, this is not fun. But now we're doing it. And so sometimes that requires of me, Daniel, to go back to a comment that you made, I think in the other episode of, I have a tendency to be like, it must be me. It's gotta be me, because if they're not doing with this with other people, I am just somehow bringing this out in them. And if I can evaluate the relationship and say, actually, even though this is a pattern with me, I'm not sinning and I'm not bringing this like toxic behavior or whatever it is to the table. So there could be something specifically with me, but I don't think it actually has anything to do with me or whatever. So I'm in this situation and I have to deal with it. A couple of weeks ago, it's like sort of come to a head and it's been this ongoing thing. And what happened is I put in appropriate boundaries that were like, what level of vulnerability am I willing to be? How safe can our conversations be? I will still be in relationship with you because we need to be in relationship, but it's not wise. We have a pattern of behavior and it's not wise. And so what I did is I used the ladder of integrity from Emotionally Healthy Relationships from Pete Scazzaro.
Yeah.
And I took that ladder of integrity and I was like, what has been violated? Why? What is it that is the actual problem?
Yeah.
What is that leaving me feeling about myself? How am I responding to this? When this happens, how does it make me feel? How do I respond? What am I willing to do? And that's my favorite part of the ladder of integrity. What am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do? Now, in the past, in that relationship, any conversation, I have felt through my lens, I have felt like that person, there was a fragility in the relationship. So if I brought anything to the table, then that person would explode. So the way that their fragility worked out was just an explosion of emotion. And so then I would just be like, okay. And then a follow-up of, well, that didn't really happen like that. You'd be like, am I in the Twilight Zone kind of thing? And so that's why it was
Here's
so
the replay.
Yes, sometimes you're like, I wish I had a recording, But what I had to do too, the other piece that's not on the ladder of integrity that I would like to write on there is, God, will you show me this person through your lens? Will you
Yes.
give
It's so
me
good.
an understanding of what could be happening? Not so I can judge, not so I can go to them and say, you're operating out of shame, but so that my heart can be broken for them.
Yeah.
So that when I approach them, it can be from this place of, I don't need to fix you. Let me take my cape off.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to tell you that I'm seeing this. I just needed God to reveal it so I could remember that you're a human working through your own sanctification process with fear and trembling. And you're going before the Lord and you're accountable for this. And there's something in there that he's working out. I just happen to be on the receiving end right now. And now I got to figure that out. So I do this ladder of integrity. But I realize I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with the person. Because what do you do when you can't even take that to the person when they're not able? So I voice record it. I had to voice record it. I am not exaggerating if I tell y'all 10 times I had to voice record it, because what would happen is all my junk would come out in the voice recording and I would, oh, there it is. There's the unforgiveness. Oh, there's the vow I just made, because what's the difference between I won't Hey, here's what I'm willing to do, what's safe and healthy. And here's what I'm not. There's a very big difference between that and making a vow, right? I will or I
Not
won't.
willing versus will not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct. And that, it seems small, but it's actually really big in your heart posture, right?
Yeah.
So here would come out in this voice text. And then I would, okay, Lord, I would take that. Really, literally, I sat in the parking lot of a Walmart grocery store for an hour. Okay. Just recording, hearing, dealing, repenting, dealing, forgiving, all of that. So I finally sent it, and it was very much like, here's what I'm seeing. Here's the pattern of behavior. Here are my examples. I'm not going to give you all of them because I'm not coming from an accusatory place.
Right.
But I just want you to understand how I've come to this conclusion. Here's how it leaves me feeling when this happens. Here is what I feel like is appropriate and what I'm willing to do. Here's what I feel like is inappropriate, what I'm not willing to do. These are my boundaries, and this is what it will take to move forward. Because the key to this, I think, in all of these relationships is, am I going to move forward? And if I am, what will it take? What can I do? What am I asking you to do? What is my expectation? And then, or am I not? So at the same time, it's like what you said, there are just bumps everywhere. I'm like, thank you for this season. At the same time, I have another relationship where it's just, I can't do that. It's just not the same. And so and where I'm the one kind of pouring into that, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to let this one lie. And so it's not always the same across the board either.
Yeah.
It's like, what relationships do you do this part in? What relationships? That requires discernment. I feel like I'm preaching right now. So sorry.
It's a good word.
It's
That's
keep going.
really good. No, it's really good.
But-
My
It's
Rolodex
a great
is going
example.
off on relationships. I'm like, that one.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I didn't see that one so clear. It's honestly, the keys are helpful because it's scripture says clearly, live at peace with all men as much as is in your power.
That's
So-
right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
good.
And that's been the big challenge.
Yeah.
What is my power to do so?
Yeah.
And that process you just stepped us through there, I'm like, I might be recording some voicemails in the near future.
It's so
that's
helpful.
Really good.
And it just requires discernment to know which ones are which. Which ones do you fight for in this way? Which ones do you fight for in this way? And which ones do you lay down?
Yeah.
The key in all of them is that you're laying it down in some way before the Lord and asking for that exchange.
That's so good. I have learned recently through this season that I'm more of a control freak than I thought. And that is such a humbling experience with the Lord. On the Enneagram scale, I'm a type 1. My phone apps are color coded. I like structure. I like things to be very neat and put together. And I thought that only applied to like inanimate objects and things like that in my life, which is so funny to me to think of now. But the Lord has been very kindly and graciously showing me
Through gritted teeth.
yes, that applies to a lot more than I thought. Because in this season of bumps, as we called it, I am learning that when I cannot make the person respond the way I want them to, I am left in a state of just complete and total just disarray. I'm like, why can I not fix this? Like, I did my part. I did everything the Bible says to do. I did everything my mentors have told me to do, like everything you told me to do, Lord, and it's not better. Why isn't it better? And then I just get in this place of just desperation.
Yeah.
And it has exposed this weakness in me and this belief that I didn't even know I had, that, that I had to be the one to fix it, or that I could have that sense of control. And no, I can't make anyone do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And reaching that point has been really freeing for me in this season of I can love you wholeheartedly, but I cannot actually control you or make this relationship or the situation what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that we both can have completely different perspectives and wounds and everything at play in a situation, whatever that relationship is, and what may, in my mind, make perfect sense as the solution may not be what they need. And receiving that too has been very hard for me, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, we talked the one time and now you're not talking to me. We need to talk. This isn't healthy. Let's talk. Nothing. I'm a fight. I'm going to keep. No, but trusting that over to the Lord and going, you know what? I can't do anything about this. That is the scariest and the hardest thing in my life for me when I'm in a season and I can't do anything. I want to be able to do something. I'm a doer.
Yeah.
Give me a job. Give me a checklist. It'll be done. I will do it so well. But if I feel powerless, that is so hard for me. And that's been such a season with the Lord for me right now is, all right, Lord, I can do nothing. So you've got to do everything. And you've got to do it in the way that you know it needs to be done. Because it's obvious that what I think needs to happen is not actually producing fruit. So I'm surrendering this to you. What do you think needs to happen? And then I'm going to focus on what is within my realm of what I can control and what I've been entrusted with and steward those things well. And that is a hard spot to be in, but it's been a good spot to reach.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Expectations are really, like, how do I put it, twisty thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing, even in my conversation, things like these expectations that are not communicated, right? Like, I have found my biggest frustration is when I want you to be somebody that you're not.
Yeah.
And some of my most healing, like I said, this is not across the board. This is some areas. One of the greatest healing moments in a relationship for me was when I could love you for what you were able to bring to the table, not what I wanted you to bring to the table.
That's so
That's
good.
such a good word.
Yeah.
That was huge. That transit. Now, I wish I had applied that to a lot of other things. Now I'm like, okay, you did really well there. But I find that, like, there's a lot more expectation in relationship than is communicated. There's, like you said, there's, like, for you, it's like, okay, give me the list. That's probably why your list is not working right now. Because the Lord's like, cool, we're going to kind of get you away from this. I don't do well with mess because I've worked in coffee in the service industry. I have a very ordered way to how I do things. Right now, I'm going to go home and probably reorganize my bookshelf alphabetically. That's a whole other thing. But I have an organizational component to who I am. Because if something's where I left it, it should be there when I come back to it. That's, in my world, normal. When things are in chaos, I internalize it. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing well. Not, hey, everybody else around you is messy.
Right.
They're messy, you're not. Either emotionally messy or just physically messy. That's been a challenge in relationships. Like, I've had people that have connected really quickly to me, right? Like, it takes people a while to get my loyalty. But once you have it, it's not removed.
Yeah.
But I've had other people that are like, oh, like announcing me, like, this is my best friend. And I'm like, whoa, slow your roll. Like, maybe not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's different expectations.
I may be your best friend, but you're not my best friend.
Yeah, I'm like,
just letting you
I'm
know.
like, my best friend, Jesus, my wife, and I'm auditioning for other places, but it's that. I'm honest. But because I know, like you're saying, we were talking about self-awareness, like figuring yourself out. I joke that I'm like, I eat intensity for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm aware of that. But I'm learning like to put myself on display. Like I don't have to hide myself. Like I don't have to give you all of me at once because I don't even deal with that. So be honest. But in a relationship, like trying to build that, it's like, well, this is who I am. This is how I'm wired. These are the things like I can learn to enjoy some of the things that you enjoy, maybe not as fully as you do.
Right.
But I'm going to recognize you, love you for you, not who I need you to be. That has been the biggest.
That's huge.
That's been the biggest learning curve that I have to apparently go back to, because I'm finding that in expectation, we all have expectations.
Oh yeah.
Even people that tell you like, I don't expect anything from you. Like you do.
Always.
Yes,
Like
you
we
do.
all do. We have an expectation for love to be reciprocated. We have expectation for respect to be reciprocated. Like if I tell you something in confidence, I expect that to be kept.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I don't communicate that as much as I expect it. That makes sense. So I think I'm learning in this season with relationships. If you constantly tell people my stuff, you know what I'm not going to tell you? My stuff. Now that to me as a loyalty person is like, what? No, that's me like, no, you're not a person who can be trusted.
Yeah.
So I have to treat you as such. So I'm able to love you for who you are. But let me tell you, this whole thing that I value that's super close to my heart, it's not going to be on the table between us.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think even in friendships, like I'm recognizing that I don't need 200 million people in my world. Like I'm good. It was a friend of mine who actually said Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing. So when he brought Peter, James, and John into the inner, the Father was doing something different with those three than he was the rest of the disciples in that moment. So there was a difference in function even for Jesus. So there are people that are allowed to come closer and be in that place because we all feel guilty about it. Like, because we've all been active in ministry. We're serving. We want to give people access. But in terms of like actual relationship, like I'm finding I have a smaller crowd and I'm actually a lot happier. Like I'm finding my happiness to volume ratio, less people, more happiness. I'm able to invest more and I'm more content with that. Like the desire to know everybody, be known by everybody, like that little thing really ruins a lot of relationships, particularly in ministry.
It's so good.
Yeah. And we could talk about this for probably
All
the
day.
whole podcast. We could just do every episode just about
On this.
relationships.
Yes.
There's so much. But yeah, time is going. And I think we have some other great conversations to
I
have.
think so. We should talk about forgiveness as
I
part
think
of
so.
this,
That would be
just kind of sitting here talking about relationships. So maybe the next one could be forgiveness.
I love
That'd
that.
be fun.
Let's do
Awesome.
that.
Awesome.